Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns and Creatures series of comedy, fantasy, novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're going to be talking about the spell Greater Invisibility. All right. I don't have a lot to say about this one because, as far as I'm concerned, it's just invisibility, but you can still attack, and which is cool. But I think you're going to tell me there's more to it than that.
There is.
Okay.
Invisibility. Okay, so whenever you say it's just invisibility, but you can attack and stuff, and that's cool. That is underselling the power and utility that brings to the table. Being invisible is already something I find personally very frustrating, in that it is a binary modifier operator that sets specific expectations between players and DMs as to what is allowed, what isn't, what things can do about invisible creatures, what things can't do about invisible creatures. You can be like, oh, well, they can hear footsteps, but they can't see them. And how does this work with things like cover? If I'm standing and they can't hear me and am I just not there? You get a lot of situations where it's supposed to be just like the blinded condition because things are heavily obscured. Things looking at you are blind to you, basically, is how the invisibility condition kind of nests itself up, which means they have just disadvantage on things against you. So as long as they know where you are, things like attack rolls can still happen and whatnot. I find more often than not, when someone wants to be invisible, they kind of expect what they're doing is going to go without notice. And outside of like very specific stealth missions, you get a lot of frustrations with, how am I being attacked? How do they know where I am? And there's going to be a lot of instances where that's going to be a real struggle. Regular invisibility has that problem. And the reason I dislike regular invisibility, and I have a very deeply unpopular opinion, and I think that spell should be higher level. I think this spell also should be higher level. I think that they both bring an element to the game that makes some characters feel entirely pointless. Greater invisibility makes it a little, I like greater invisibility a little bit more because it's typically better on your friends than it is on you, because your friends that are going to be in the thick of things want advantage on attack rolls often more. They're going to want the benefits of being invisible a little bit more than you do. So like putting on your rogue, for example, just always gives them sneak attack because they have advantage on all their attack rolls. It means their odds of critting go up by a whole lot, and their disengage and moving around makes them very hard to pinpoint down and kill. I think that great invisibility as a whole, as it is presented in this edition, is problematic at minimum, but it is very fun. It's undeniably super cool to be invisible and sneaking around. And with greater invisibility, the sheer number of bananas things that you're able to do is just, it's very high. It requiring concentration, I mean, you can't like stack it with other powerful effects, but it does mean that it protects your own concentration by the nature of you being invisible. So long as you're moving after you can use your actions to do things, if you're casting off your other spells, if you're even just like firing off cantrips, as long as you keep moving, hypothetically, you should be doing it and basically untargetable, which is absurd.
Now, you started off saying that it's frustrating because you feel like you should be untargetable, which I took to mean that you're not actually.
Correct. So conceivably, because this is one of the big problems of Dungeons and Dragons, generally speaking, and role-playing games, generally speaking. Everyone is envisioning the scenario that is being presented. Everyone's envisioning the group story in their own way, which means how things are moving, how things are acting, the personality of characters, the vision of characters, the vision of actors in the space is going to differ. With things like invisibility, it may to the DM or may to the player feel like there's enough space in here, there's enough dust, there's enough dirt, there's enough open sound, it's quiet enough that you can still know where the invisible creature that is attacking you is. There's clear signs that may not be apparent to the players by the wordage that the DM has spoke that is revealing the location of the character. And it's going to make it so, in order for that to feel fair, and in order for the spell not to literally flip the power of the game or the game's power on its head, you have to be very clear in saying, these are the elements of the room that you can navigate into. This is spaces that are, you can basically have to tell the players where they can and cannot be while being perceived in some meaningful way, whether that's not being heard or being infecting the world around them in a way that is perceivable. That is going to be kind of your problem. If you're playing against wolves that have really heightened sense of smell, they might still be able to locate the space the character's in. The players may not immediately be onto that. Whenever the wolves on your turn in the combat scenario that you're trying to make go quickly, whenever you say, great, 3 wolves jump off of the ledge and go maul the invisible wizard, to you, the DM, it might make sense. Thinking about the circumstances where they're attacking that player, you might say they have keen sight and smell. They can smell the wizard from a mile away carrying the balls of bat guano and other garbage on them, right? That's going to be something that alerts them to their position. The player isn't necessarily thinking about any of that. The player might be thinking, I stepped off to the side where no one can see me after I fire my spell.
After the first
Why would I
time.
know where I am? Yeah. But even after then, the first time of use, then we're immediately in conflict, right? That immediately brings up the conflict of how the hell do this thing see me? How am I being targeted? Where's the invisibility thing, right? There's an initial conflict there that I find frustrating.
Now, having said all that, now you said invisibility and greater invisibility should be higher level than they are. Is that dependent on these conditions and interpretations?
I would across the board say, even if you are all in the same understanding of the spell, I would say they should be higher level still. I would say even if you're fighting against creatures that are decent at understanding and hitting invisible creatures, the impact they have on others, I find to be somewhat miserable. The rogue stops being as cool, sneaky, stealthy character the moment the wizard hits third level in most games. Because if we're going to be honest, and I fall into this bucket too, I love invisibility. I take on my warlocks, I take on my wizards. 3 different classes and a billion subclasses get invisibility access. So lots of people are going to be using this spell. You're going to make the rogue's job feel obsolete. That expertise stealth skill, sure, they're better at being the invisible creature, but they're now about as good as everyone else in most situations. In most situations, manual stealth feels so much worse once invisibility enters into the picture. Then you have to start dealing with magical sensors at third level. You're talking very introductory of the game, whenever things are still supposed to be, in my opinion, rather mundane, and making it so magical interaction is required in order for it to feel like the mundane characters can have interactive moments still. I think that's dumb. I think there needs to be a little bit more of a barrier between when magic can circumnavigate the problems of the mundane. You need to be getting like plus 12, 16, or maybe not 12 and 16s, but you need to get much higher modifiers and stealth skills to be comparable to invisibility. And because invisibility comes down so fast and so early and mitigates so many problems that you would otherwise need to be making skill checks that characters are aimed at doing, it's on average, I find frustrating. I don't like playing rogues if I have other people in the party with invisibility, because I go, well, that was supposed to make my cool shtick. I guess I'm just not going to make my cool shtick anymore and try and switch around and talk to my DM about changing my expertise to something else, because we have a way to do that.
All right. You spat that all out really rapid fire.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you to take back a step and all right, let's go back with the rogue. Cool. Now, what exactly is the problem?
I dislike that rogues often will want to specialize in stealth. Oftentimes their goal is going to be sneaking into places undetected. Right. I find invisibility trivializes a lot of those encounters. Okay. And that makes the rogue's feeling of specialization feel moot in exchange for a single feature another class gets. And not just another class, a lot of other classes get. A single spell that exists within, like, if this were just an illusionist spell, I would feel a lot less bad about it, because that's what the illusionist is supposed to be doing. If there were just a warlock archfey spell, I'd feel a lot less bad about it, because again, that's supposed to be their sort of shtick. They are the specialist sneaky one in this case. Because so many characters have access to it, and it can often just feel like something you tack onto your wizard because it's good, and it trivializes something that other characters have to specialize to do. Your rangers and rogues, even like your Way of Shadow monks, right as when you're starting to get the peak of your cool, stealthy subterfuge character, other classes just say, well, I have a spell that does your whole bit better. I have a spell that just says, why would I make a stealth check at all whenever I can just walk past behind the wall where no one can hear me and be invisible while doing it? It makes it so there are circumstances that a rogue would never be able to infiltrate through stealth that someone with invisibility can. And it happens so early, I think it's a big feels bad. I understand this is not by any means a popular opinion, and the spell is definitely very fun. And for casual tables, it'll often feel great to use for everyone involved. I just wish it happened a little bit later.
As a common rogue player, I even disagree with you. I think, rogues can still be sneaky, and a lot of people can cast invisibility, but that's a decision they're going to have to make. That, it has a cost. They're giving up their ability to cast other things in its place, and I mean, a rogue plus invisibility is,
marginally better.
A better version of itself.
5% better than invisibility. If you think, like, in the number of circumstances that invisibility makes it so some stealth missions that couldn't be done easily are now free, and other stealth missions that would be somewhat challenging for the rogue are entirely obsolete. And I think that's dumb. That's just my personal opinion, though. And I think that's just going to be something we're going to disagree on fundamentally. I understand most people disagree on that.
Even with the marginal improvement on stealth shenanigans, what were you saying before about getting
Advantage on all your attack
advantage to
rolls.
attacks, and heightening the odds of critical hits and
Everyone has disadvantage on
sneak
attack rolls
attacks.
against you
That's
too.
yeah,
Yep.
that's
Bananas.
that's
very good.
roguiness.
Yeah, this is, I will say, I actually think Greater Invisibility is a more interesting spell than Invisibility in that because Invisibility specifically prevents things from it being used in combat by it mitigating, like you probably use it to engage a combat, not necessarily to interact with one. You often are using this to replace the skills stealth checks. Greater Invisibility more so exists as something you stick on your rogue, you stick on your fighter, you stick on your monk to go make a billion attack rolls and get crits on a whole bunch of them because they're getting advantage on a bunch of things. And I think that makes it so you don't often want to cast a spell to replace somebody, but to empower them. And I think that makes it a little bit more interesting. Granted, this also can just be something you cast on yourself and it's great. And you're just sitting in the back line and scooting back and forth. And if the DM is one that is with you and says, well, no one can see you, so no one knows where you are. And, we don't have creatures with special senses, and I'm not going to bother getting see invisibility, so I'm just going to not interact with you anymore. You can just do your thing and shoot us. Yeah. Then you're going to have a pretty good time with that too. And I think that's honestly going to be most of the case with this. I mean, most of the time in Greater Invisibility is going to be you are invisibly untargetable in the back line, just laying into things while everyone else is taking the damage.
Yeah. One other thing I will give Greater Invisibility over Invisibility is that by the time you get Greater Invisibility, you've already used Invisibility, so you know how your DM is going to handle that.
Yeah, that's true. You shouldn't be caught off guard as badly with Greater Invisibility than you are with Invisibility. There's still gonna be moments where like maybe you've been casting Invisibility all game and just have never used it in combat because you really can't. And then you can still have the moments of how does he know where I am? But you're right. It's going to be lesser because of that, because it's a 4th level spell a little bit further down the road. For sure.
All right, we got a Sam score.
I think both Invisibilities are 5 out of 5s. And I really can't emphasize enough that Invisibility solves some problems that otherwise feel unsolvable, and will be in situations where this just gets you places and gets you things you need to do. On top of it being an amazing buff for your allies, on top of it being an amazing buff for yourself, this is just going to be a spell your DM has to deal with in some way, shape, or form. This is something that's going to cause conflict at the table sometimes, but it is also going to reshape the world, and you're going to have some really fun, cool moments being invisible. Being invisible is genuinely really amazing and feels great, and a lot of people really love it. And I love being invisible too, personally. I just have different gripes with it that are personal opinion stuff.
Yeah, I'm also giving it a 5 out of 5, but from strictly a rogue's perspective.
Oh, from the perspective of only a rogue. The rogue 5 out of 5 star. Bob's rogue's 5 out of 5 star.
I love rogues.
Yeah, me too.
All right. That was Greater Invisibility, everyone. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, our full review of the spell, and other fun things.